Well, what happens with absolute value is that I'm going to be able to introduce you guys into generic forms of equations. And just about every single equation that we graph, whether it's absolute values, linear, quadratic, conic sections, logarithmic, exponential, trigonometric, and so on and so forth, they all are going to share this same style of same component. Every one of these graphs starts with what we call a parent function. These parent functions are then shifted. Okay? The shifts occur by some horizontal or some vertical shift point. This is where we introduce you guys to what are called A, H, and K. So when I get into this here, the first thing I'm going to do is just kind of look at, I got some graph paper for you guys to use again today, if you still need some, because I know I gave you guys a bunch the other day. If you're looking at just a generic absolute value graph, what did absolute value stand for? The distance from zero, right. So if I'm looking at distance from zero, just grab like 2 of them. Probably won't need any more than that. You might have some left over from yesterday too. When you're talking about the distance from zero, you are always plotting positive values. Because no matter which way you are going, if you're going backwards, you're not walking a negative direction. You're just walking, I should say, you're not walking a negative value, excuse me. You're just walking a different direction. So absolute value is always a positive value. Obviously, when you guys started learning how to graph, you always made tables. Correct me if I'm wrong. Oh. Yeah. And you always picked easy numbers to work with. When I taught Algebra 1 or pre-algebra way back in the day, and even still today with geometry when you're graphing simple lines, or pre-calc, we're doing this today too. When you want to graph something, you always want to see what's happening around the origin, around the y-axis, the x-axis. So I always like to pick a couple of negatives and a couple of positives, as well as 0, just to generate some points. So I'm going to overdo this a little bit, say -4, -2, 0, 2, and 4. Picking x's, substituting for x, generate some y. All right? So this is real tough. What's the absolute value of -4?
4.
4. The next one gives me 2. What's the absolute value of 0? Is it nothing or 0?
Nothing.
0. Is 0 something?
Yes.
It's nothing. But is nothing 0?
No.
Unless it's 0.
Why? But is nothing something?
Only when it's 0. And then absolute value of positive numbers stayed positive. This here helps to generate, this here helps you to generate ordered pairs to see what the graph looks like. Now if I start plotting points then, well, -4 and 4, -2 and 2, 0, 0, 2, 2, 4, 4, 4.
This is going to be like one of those little V things.
Yeah, exactly. These are linear. Absolute value graphs do not have a curve to them. They are linear. They do have a slope, and they do have a vertex. They look like that.
Same.
They're symmetrical about the vertex.
I'm not.
Do you guys remember when you worked back in Algebra 1, when you dealt with parabolas?
Yes.
Parabolas had an axis of symmetry.
Yeah.
They were symmetrical about some value, the opposite of e over 2a, that x coordinate of the
Yes.
vertex. It kind of works the same way here. Every single absolute value is going to have some vertex where the two lines, where they change direction. This vertex can lie at 0, 0. It can lie at 5, 0. It could lie at -3 and -5. That's what happens when this graph gets shifted. it could also have a different, so I made that work better. But by making this graph bigger, it's making the slope of this smaller. See how that's going? You can scale it. Oh, that's really kind of bad. Whoops. You could have a graph where you have a very steep slope. That's symmetrical. You can have a very wide slope. But it all depends on something. Yeah. Left and right? No, you can't turn it left and right, but you can.
Flip it upside down.
You can invert it.
Yay!
Inversion.
You can invert it because isn't that like a negative slope? If you're looking at the right-hand tail of these things, treat that as you would slope. Yes, sir? Well, aren't all lines straight? You mean just a straight up and down, left and right? No, that's not going to be absolute value. Absolute value is going to have, you're thinking they can be perpendicular like that, but an absolute value is going to have a symmetrical set to it. I know what you mean. There is a diagonal axis of symmetry that you will learn more about in pre-calc.
But then it wouldn't be a function.
You're right, it would not be a function because it wouldn't pass that vertical line test. But you can do a diagonal axis of symmetry, and that's the pre-calc. So come back in like next year. What's that? I don't think it's absolute value. I forget what function it was. I think it's a something. So what happens here in an absolute value function, you can do this. Y equals a absolute value x minus h plus k. Last year in geometry, you guys did something with the equation of a circle. X minus h quantity squared plus y minus k quantity squared was r squared. What did h and k represent? Well, which one of those do you think is the radius?
Oh, the R.
Very good. It is. It's the center. H and K was the center of the circle. In other words, kind of like the vertex, if you will. It's the middle, where all things happen. Now, if you said this, x minus 3 quantity squared plus y plus 2 quantity squared was 4. Where's your center at?
No.
Very good. 3 and negative 2. Very good. Because what happens here is you're taking take the value less the sign, change the sign here, because they're both minus. Do you remember that rule? So now if I do this with my absolute value graph, oops, my h and k is my vertex. It has a horizontal shift and a vertical shift. H moves left and right because it's horizontal. K moves up and down because it's vertical. I know there's no K in vertical, but it works. Alright?
What are you talking about? There's no K in vertical.
I want you to treat A like a queen. Treat it like a slope. Okay? Treat it like a slope. And when I'm saying treat it like a slope, I want you to treat it like a slope for the right-hand side of the vertex. Because the left-hand side is just the opposite. I'll show you an example.
Yay!
So this is what happens now. We have this vertex that shifts, this h and k, this horizontal vertical shift. This value of a that can be put out in front of an absolute value tells you kind of like a scalar. It's a scalar multiplier. No matter what we do here on out, when you see h's and k, they stand for the same thing. Horizontal, vertical. The value of A out in front of something also stands for the same thing when they're in generic form. It's how the amplitude, how the width of something changes. Here we're talking slope, we're linear. The width that something opens up and closes, the narrower, the wider. When we start talking about exponential functions, the rate at which they climb is a quicker curve outward or a closer curve outward depending upon the value of A. When you get to trigonometry, A stands for amplitude. For a sine curve, it tells you how high up and how low down the curves go. It tells you your peaks and valleys. The H to the K still moves it left and right. It's a nice generic form that we utilize all throughout Algebra 2 and then into pre-calc. You'll get sick of H and K. So, let's do.
Well, Mr. Murphy, I like all letters of the alphabet.
Well, I'm glad. Oops. Let's do this. I want to graph y equals negative times the absolute value of x plus 2 plus 3. And when I do these types of problems that have A, H's, and K's, I really like to label stuff. Okay? I really like to label stuff. What's my value of A in this case? Negative 1. So if my value of A is negative 1, what direction do you think this is going to open up? Up or down?
Yeah.
Down. And the reason that it's going to open down is because A is negative. So A tells you that it's going to go downward. All right? If A is negative, it goes downward. Just like you had when you had quadratics, if it was negative 2x squared, you knew that it wasn't up like a cup, it was down like a frown. When I know what direction things are going, I do that. You don't need to. I always made it a habit when I was a student because I could label everything going forward because it's just it's a system, it's how I set it up, it's gonna work no matter what. But if I accidentally forget that it was negative, I'm all wrong. I went the wrong way. But by just knowing that the direction's gonna go that way, I know that, okay, when I go to plot points, I know to walk downward, okay? It's just a little primer to remind yourselves of. I do this all the time for things that go different directions. I know which way things are gonna go, all right? H here is gonna be what? What's K? Good. So that means you have a center then at negative 2 and 3, and then the hard part, finding negative 2 and 3. Whew. And now all I have to do is walk my slope. And this is why I was saying, I know that it's going to walk downward, so the right-hand side of this, I'm going to walk it as a negative 1 slope. Down 1, right 1, down 1, right 1. And what do you think I put on the other side? I just mirror it. I go the other direction. When we're doing stuff like this, if you put 4 or 5 of them on there, you'll be all right. It just so happened that this one, since the slope was negative 1, you can fill it up real fast.
Yeah.
If the slope is like negative 3/5, you might only get 2 of them on there.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And then you're done. There's your graph. Yes, sir.
So basically, you can just solve for 0.
What do you mean solve for 0?
Like, if you put 0 as the x value,
Mm-hmm.
then you just solve for that, and that gives you your origin, and then you can put the graph from there.
Ah, if you put 0 in for x, it does not give you, it gives you your y-intercept.
Use your y-intercept?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that goes back, and so, you know what, it's funny, because you're the second person to bring that up. If you go back to just slope-intercept form, y equals 2x plus 3, if you substitute in 0 for x, what's your y-intercept? 3. Same deal. Anytime you substitute in for 0, when you have a linear equation, or even a or really any equation, anytime you substitute in 0 for x, you will always find your y-intercept, no matter what the equation is, whether it's a cubic, quartic, 7th power, it doesn't matter. What's that?
Well, just ignore me. I'm not
mark it in the wrong spot?
Because there's one, but you just said y intercept is 3.
If I put 0 in from that, I get
It's -2 plus 3.
Oh, that's why! Because there's a +3! Oh, crap! Oh, jeez, I was like, wait, I know I was mathing right. Oh. What's behind the equation? You feel better about that now?
Yeah.
Me too. That really freaked me out for a second. Like, wait, I've been doing this wrong all my life? Okay.
I would have laughed at you.
Yeah. Well.
Don't act like you wouldn't laugh at us if it was one
That's
of us.
true. I would laugh at you too. All right. Same idea. Okay.
Gosh, Marty. Keep your stuff together. Oh, I thought you were throwing them at me.
Do the same thing. We'll do the exact same thing. This time I'm going to move this over out of the way so when I move the graph, we don't forget about the -3. There. When I do this, a 1/2, it's positive, so which direction should it open? Up. H is 2, A is -3, vertex 2, -3. Plot it,
Oh.
walk the slope. Up 1, right 2. Now, notice again, yes ma'am.
Gosh, Mr. Murphy.
Remember, it's y, whenever your generic equation is y equals a x minus h plus k. So if it's x minus 2, that means this value has to be a 2. Because if it was x plus 2, it would be x minus a -2. The h value usually changes the sign. Let me pull it out. The h value usually changes the sign. The k value.
Not like throwing one down.
No, I'm just picking out that. I'm just taking that. And notice again that I started with my slope going to the right, and then I just mirror it going the other way. Because they're symmetrical. Yes, sir.
I think the absolute value sign will be a calculator.
I forgot.
He got so good at doing it in his head.
There's a button around there somewhere.
I mean, I don't want to look for it.
Well, you know, I don't want to, you know, get a job, but I had to.
Wouldn't you like it if someone could donate money to you at no cost to them? Wouldn't it just make your life easier?
If someone could donate money to me at no cost to them. Yeah.
Would you not help, would you not, want them to help you?
Well, why can't I help myself?
Because, yeah, I mean, if it costs
Because you're old and lonely and
what's
play
the point
bingo.
of not?
It's my heart and stomps on it. Go home and cry. Okay?
What is the equation?
Matt!
It's the absolute value graph, I'll tell you that, because we're in the absolute value section. What is the equation? So when we're working backwards for finding the equation, we start with the generic formula. Y equals A, absolute value x minus h, and plus k. One thing you can tell right away about A is what?
It's negative.
Good. A has to be negative. The reason that it's negative is because it's opening downward. You okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay. The next thing you'll be able to tell for certain, I apologize if it's not as clean as what you guys would like to see.
Wow, thanks.
1, 2, 3, up 1. Where's your vertex? 3, 1. So my vertex is at 3, 1. So now that's my value of h, and that's my value of k. The slope will be negative, so I'm just going to walk the right-hand side of that and find my slope. 1 little, 2 little, 3 little spots.
Yes.
1 little, 2 little, 3 little spots. Down 3, right 3 gives you a slope of
That just happened, guys.
negative 1. So, all in all,
Simplify your answer, Mr. Murphy.
oh,
Take away the one.
It's negative
Just put
absolute value of x.
am I wrong though?
No.
Actually, I would have been marked off on that.
Why?
All of my algebra classes for not fully simplifying my problem.
-1.
Why?
Because it's not fully simplified.
Because Miss Todd doesn't know how to teach.
It's fine.
It's fine, yeah. But the way I
Don't worry, I will not be the negative 1 Nazi, if that makes sense.
that makes
Is that
me
okay?
feel much better.
I will not go after you for
I would
writing a 1.
I would appreciate it if you weren't a Nazi.
No, I've got problems with that. I'm just saying I'm not going to be that guy, the negative 1 policeman.
Okay.
Okay. If you write negative or negative 1, if you forget it's negative, then you're going to jail. You do not collect $200.
That one time that I missed that one point on that one test because I forgot the negative and I wanted to cry.
Last one that I give you some homework problems to do. It should be pretty easy tonight. No. Because I change it a lot. It always depends on how far things, I have ideas of what I want to give you. And I have those things written down, but it always depends on how far I get in class. Because I'm always thinking I'm going to do more than I can. So I don't like to just say, hey, do all of these problems, and then all of a sudden, it doesn't work. I'll give the answer here in a second. 10 problems. Why?
Wait, is this?
Mr. Murphy, I was always told that if you give a man fish, that he'll eat for a day, but if you give a man a fishing pole and teach him how to use it, he'll eat for a lifetime. So
Right.
I think that you should figure out how to do this problem. Show me.
You can wish in one hand and the
No,
other
mister.
and see what fills up first.
Wait. Help. Help, 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 help.
What?
Where's your vertex?
It was like you can wish in one hand in the other.
Vertex is at -1.
-1, 1. I did.
-1, -1. What's your slope? 2. So my A value is 2. So my answer is y equals, oops, not y equals oops, but y equals 2. Absolute value, x plus 1, very good. -1. You see why x plus 1 is the absolute value now? Because the h is, it would be x minus -1. Once you see it, it's actually
Whatever you say.
whoa! Shh. What happens here is that when you have your vertex, if your vertex is at h is -1, k is -1.
Oh, wait.
When you substitute in, you get x minus a -1, which is x plus 1.
Okay, thank you.
That's why that happens. That's the whole idea of switching the h's, but not the k. All right? Whole whopping 10 problems. I got 4 graphs and 6 write the equations. It should not be very difficult. Tomorrow we will probably jump into linear land. systems of equations.
My mom says not to go places with strangers, so I can't go there, sorry.
Okay. Yeah, we should be able to start that.